Hey guys, I hope your day is going great. Hey guys, all right, one of your assignments for this 2 week period involves you reading a story about the Max Force roller coaster at Six Flags. And it involves you imagining, I'll go ahead and read the assignment to you. It says, imagine that you took a ride on the Max Force roller coaster. Write a first person narrative story about your experience. How did you feel during the ride? What was the most exciting part? And make sure you use the words gravity and force at least once in your story. Now, one of the things that I want you to focus on is the fact that we're going to write a narrative. A narrative is nothing more than a fancy way to say a story. This is going to be a more specific narrative, though. This is not just a random story that you are making up. This is going to be a story that is about you going on the Max Force roller coaster. A lot of times when we ask you to write a narrative, we say that you can just make up a story and, like most stories, you have characters, you try to develop the characters, there's usually a problem in the story, you try to solve the problem, and then you end up, by the end, coming up with a solution and the story comes to a close. There's a lot of things that we've talked about this year. Now, remember this year, at the very beginning of the year, we wrote narratives. A lot of things that we talked about was, one, starting the narrative with a hook, a very interesting way to start the narrative. Now, I'm going to show you what this story did. This story about the Max Force roller coaster starts off with a nice hook. This is the hook, so watch this. Check this out. So this is the beginning of this story. You wait in line, your excitement building. Finally, you take a seat. Your heart pounds as safety bars lock around you. Suddenly, whoosh, the seat shoots forward. You're off on a record-breaking roller coaster ride. Now, many of you can tell me why that is called a hook. At the beginning of any story, you want to hook the reader, whoever you're writing the story for, you want to hook them into what they're going to read. If we were just to start this story off over here with, I was waiting in line. It was long. We waited forever. And then I got on the roller coaster. And then we went down the hill. Would that be a good hook? No. Okay. So our hook needs to show excitement. It needs to get the reader to be like, oh man, I want to read this because this might be something interesting that I would like to get into and find out more about. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about, is coming up with a hook. Another thing we're going to talk about is, where do you start? I have many of my students asking me all the time, I don't know where to start. I have no clue how to write a story. They often say, I don't have an imagination. I can't figure these things out. Well, a lot of people can't, and even authors have this hard time sometimes when they're trying to write a story. They have a difficult time too. It's called writer's block. Sometimes you just can't think of another thing to write about. You can't think of characters. You can't think of a storyline. You can't think of a setting that it's going to take place in. So this is why we do this. Okay? So what you're looking at right now is a planning of my narrative, how I'm going to plan it. I'm going to start by brainstorming some characters. There's some characters that I want in my story. Remember, all the time we're focusing on what we need to do. We need to write a first-person narrative about riding on the Max Force coaster. First person means that you are in the story, okay? So we need to think about characters. So one of the characters has to be you, but we want a couple other characters. We don't want it just to be with you in the story. That would not be as interesting and as fun if we just had one character in the story. So we're going to not just list the characters here, but here we're going to list the characters and we're going to tell some interesting things about those characters. We're going to give away some character traits for those characters. That's going to kind of be part of my planning. Next part is the setting. We're going to start talking about and trying to brainstorm some ideas about the setting. The story, your narrative does not have to take place at Six Flags right away. It could start somewhere else. You could start your narrative on the drive to Six Flags. Now, what's really cool in a narrative is coming up with a problem. A problem doesn't have to be some huge, gigantic problem. The problem doesn't have to be that we got into a gigantic car crash and we didn't get to make it to Six Flags. The problem here could simply be that you're nervous about getting on the roller coaster because you've never ridden a roller coaster before. So we're going to think about the problem and what's going to happen with the problem, all right? And then finally, and last but not least, we're going to come up with a solution. And this, guys, is going to be how we plan out our narrative. This is a very basic plan for our narrative. We don't even need to write sentences here. All right, guys, if you're with me so far, make sure you continue to follow along because next thing is we're going to start planning this and I'm going to come up with my own narrative. All right, guys. All right, guys, you've caught me halfway in my planning right now, so I'm going to discuss a little bit of my planning. This is kind of cool. One of my favorite things about writing a story is that when you write a story, it is coming from your brain. You can make a lot of it up, and it's amazing. You need to have some knowledge about what you need to do and what you need to write about, but most of it comes from your own imagination, which I did. It's pretty cool, and I'll show you what I did. So for my characters, I chose 3. I chose me, that's Woody, and then I wrote some things about me. I said, I'm scared of roller coasters because I have a fear of heights. Now, next thing, I put some, you can see that I used my family right here. I used me, Janine, and Arlo. That's my entire family. However, you can see that I changed a little bit of who they were. Janine is no longer my wife. In my story, she's going to be my girlfriend, and she has no fear. That means she doesn't fear roller coasters at all. And you can see Arlo. Arlo is no longer my son. In this story, he's going to be my bossy friend that has no fear. Okay? And he often makes fun of me. So you can already kind of see some things that are going to happen in this story just by looking at the characters and how they are described here. And then my setting, I decided to have 3 different settings. First thing, we're going to start off in the car on the way to Six Flags. Then we're going to be at Six Flags for number 2. And then number 3, we're going to be on the Max Force roller coaster. As you can see, you came right in the middle of me planning my narrative. Next thing, I guarantee you that most of you can probably think about what my problem's going to be. Think about it real. You could probably make a good inference right now as to what my problem's going to be because of some of my character traits that I said about myself. My major character trait is that I have a fear of heights and I do not like roller coasters. So what do you think my problem's going to be? You got it. My problem is going to be that I am scared to get on the Max Force roller coaster because of how high it goes and how fast it goes. So I'm going to have a major problem about getting on the roller coasters. And then you could probably see that there's probably going to be another problem. The other problem is going to be that my girlfriend and my best friend that came with me are probably going to give me a hard time. I would imagine that they're going to give me a hard time because they have no fear and they want to get on the roller coaster. And they maybe be doing some convincing. C. Now this is a great example. Do you see how this narrative is writing itself? Already, by me just telling you the characters and the setting, we have a good idea of where this narrative is going to go. All right, guys, stay tuned. I'm going to do a little bit more planning. I need my thought process. So I'm going to put the camera down. Bye. See you in a minute. next thing I'm going to give you are some keys or some tricks to help your narrative pop. And what I mean by pop, I mean it's going to make you sound like an author, a true professional author. These are the tricks that authors use to make the story a little bit more interesting. Makes the story flow. So here we go. First thing I want to talk about is adding a great hook. We've kind of already mentioned that. A hook can be in any form. A hook can be a question, so you can start your story off with a question that's going to engage the reader. A dramatic event or an exciting event, either one. When I say dramatic, I mean like some kind of drama happening. Or an exciting event like something crashes, something exciting happens in an event. Or you can start it off with dialogue. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you right now, I think I'm going to start my narrative, my story, off with dialogue. It's going to be dialogue, but it's also going to be dramatic. So I'm going to kind of add two into my hook. The next thing is dialogue. Something that's a little bit difficult to add into your narrative. Dialogue is the conversations happening within the story between two characters. They're always surrounded by quotation marks. Those quotation marks are telling you that the characters are having a conversation with each other. So number 3 is think of synonyms to use for overused words. Some of the overused words that I could think of are like good, fine, said, fun, hard, easy, those kind of words. You can always find different words to use so you're not constantly saying the same word over and over and over. The next one is something that all great authors use, is transitions. Make sure you're using these at the beginning of sentences, at the end of sentences, things like that. You want to say things like, after this, ... something happened, or as a result, or once she said that. The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to get writing, so stay tuned. Okay, I'm going to start my narrative off. I am not going to name or title this narrative at all. I'm just going to write at the top, my narrative. Okay, I'm going to put a couple reminders up here for me. Up at the very top, I'm going to remind myself to write a great hook. I'm going to remind myself to remember dialogue. I'm going to remind myself about synonyms. And transitions. Those are good reminders. And then off to the side over here, I'm also going to remind myself that I need to use, I believe in the assignment, it said something about using the words force and gravity. Because that was part of what it asked us to do. I'm going to start this with a great hook. And I believe what I'm going to do, since when I looked at the characters, I'm obviously scared of the roller coaster. And I have a fear of heights, and Janine, my girlfriend, and Arlo, my bossy friend, have a tendency to not have any fear, and my friend Arlo often makes fun of me. Okay guys, one of my goals here was to let you know that once you end up doing your planning for any story, any story that you write, the hard work is the planning, coming up with all of the thoughts, the ideas. Once you start writing and you have all of the character traits in mind of all your characters, you have the problem, you know, what's going to be some of the hardships going on in the story, and then what the solution is, you can pretty much think of what you're doing while you're writing, and it writes itself. So I'm not saying that it's just that easy, but what I am saying is that if I didn't do any planning here, this wouldn't have happened. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read the story to you while and ended up writing very quickly. Ended up writing a 2.5 page story. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you as we look at it. Okay. I can't believe that you are so scared of a silly little baby roller coaster, taunted Arlo. I felt like curling up into a little ball and hiding in a closet forever. The thought of getting on the Max Force roller coaster scared me to death. Just the force alone on the downhill would make my stomach turn. Leave him alone, pleaded Janine. You know that Woody has a great fear of heights. Our car pulled into the parking lot and my heart began to beat faster. Meanwhile, Arlo and Janine continued to talk about how much fun riding the Max Force was going to be. I hesitantly opened the door and began walking with them toward the entrance to Six Flags. I was secretly hoping that the ride was broken so we couldn't go on it. There it is, yelled Arlo. I can't wait to get on it, cried Janine. We walked to get to the end of the line. The wait was about 30 minutes. That was the best coaster I've ever been on, cheered a lady that had just gotten off the ride. That wasn't so bad, stated another little kid that exited the coaster. Hearing this, my mind began to feel at ease. Arlo continued with his laughing and poking fun at my fear of roller coasters. I just rolled my eyes and waited. Finally, it was our turn to board the coaster. The huge words, Max Force, were on the side and my heart began to beat so fast that I almost passed out. As the employees came by to make sure we were buckled in tightly, Janine looked over at me and calmly said, Everything's going to be alright. You're going to love it. The coaster slowly went up the hill as the anticipation of the force of gravity pulling us down was in everyone's faces. Whoosh! We went down the first hill and my stomach felt like it came out of my mouth. We went around each turn so fast that I couldn't help but crack a smile out of pure enjoyment. Just like that, the ride ended. While getting off the coaster, Arlo looked at me and said, Told you it was nothing. I looked at Arlo, then back at Janine and said, Let's do that again. That was amazing. Alright guys, this wasn't a masterpiece by any means, but it was a short narrative that did everything that the assignment wanted you to do. Okay, so this video that I made is mainly to help you with ideas, to help you with your planning, and to make sure that you guys don't necessarily, whenever you hear the word narrative or someone's telling you to write a story, that it's not, you don't have a fear of it. It's not really that big of a deal. You can plan it out very quickly and come up with ideas. Then once you plan it out, come up with your ideas, all of the things that I mentioned in here, that's when you can write your story. And your story doesn't have to be perfect. Okay? You can cross words out. You can write phrases. You don't have to write sentences. You can write run-on sentences because this is our first draft. My next draft might be different. I might change a lot. I might use synonyms, a whole bunch of things in here, okay? So I'm going to show you real quick what I'm talking about. Right here, right where I said Arlo and Janine continue to talk about how much fun. So I'm thinking of maybe a synonym for fun. I could look up synonyms in a thesaurus. I could look online. There's a thesaurus.com you can look at. These are all good ideas. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you got some good ideas from this, and I hope it's going to help you with the assignment. All right, guys. Take it easy. Bye.